Hey there, Fletch from All Things Overlanding here, and you might notice that I'm in the car. I'm driving. And the reason for that is I just went to a nearby state and I picked up a new car. It is not an overlanding vehicle, so just to set the record straight there from the get-go, but it leads into the topic for this episode of the podcast that I wanted to talk about, and that is, should you buy a second car when your primary vehicle is an overlanding rig? So I'm going to talk a little bit about that, the pros and cons of it. I'm going to talk about why you might want to do it. I'm going to try and justify it a little bit because, that's what I literally just did. I've always been a two-car person, so for me to have two cars is just kind of my comfort state. That's where I usually am. I'm going to talk a little bit about what I got. I'm going to talk about why, what makes it different from the truck, and kind of, my feelings on why having two vehicles like this makes sense. So if you want to hear about what I got, if you want to hear more about kind of my ideas for why I think it makes a ton of sense to have two vehicles, if you can swing it, when you have an overlanding vehicle, stay tuned to hear more on that.
Sandstorm, I fought it, though I wanted everything to do with what you give to me.
All right, so let me kind of start with my sort of typical disclaimer that I usually give, especially when I'm talking about things like gear. Do not let this podcast or, any YouTuber or anything like that necessarily influence you, especially like financially. If you don't have to, it's not a keeping up with the Joneses kind of thing, right? You don't have to have a second car if it doesn't make sense or it's not feasible financially, or you don't have space for it, or some people have kids with cars and so they already have too many cars to be able to park one, an extra car in their driveway or in their garage. So again, I am saying this all as my own opinion. It is literally just my thoughts on this topic, and take it all with a grain of salt. But again, I'm going to give you kind of the pros and the cons of this. I'm going to talk a little bit about, why I typically have two cars. There are multiple reasons. And I'm also going to talk about why I think that if you're careful about it, right, if you're smart about what you buy, you can actually make pretty smart financial decisions, right? So let's start by talking about limitations first, right? So what I mean by limitations is, again, I kind of mentioned a couple of them a second ago. If you don't have a ton of space and it doesn't make sense for a second vehicle, then that's totally fine. But then you need to consider your overlanding build probably needs to be modular, right? It needs to be more something that you could use for everyday life. And then when you're ready to go camping, you could put stuff in it. You could move stuff around. You have, stuff in crates and things like that that you can move in and out of the vehicle if you want to or need to. So you need your setup to be more modular and less permanent. In my case, I obviously have a YouTube channel. I do a lot of camping, overlanding, and I think about camping and overlanding a lot, and I want to be ready to go and just get on the road. If I have a chance to go, I'm just going to hop on the road and I'm going to go. So I like to have as much stuff as possible in the vehicle. I'm also forgetful, if I'm being fully transparent, and so I hate it when I go on a trip and I get out there and I realize I forgot something really important. So again, in my setup, I like to have it full-time, as much stuff as possible on there. I pack a backpack. I throw a couple extra pieces of gear that I may need for a specific trip, like my shower, my portable Bouge RV shower, or, a diesel heater if it's winter, that kind of thing. The stuff that I may not need all the time, I will throw that stuff in, but I'm pretty much ready to go at a moment's notice. And that's the way I set up mine. Again, if you don't have room for an extra vehicle, if it's financially not feasible, that's totally fine too. Just think about that when you're setting up your overlanding rig. Now next, let's talk about some of the benefits of having a secondary vehicle. I'm going to give you a good real-life example, and I apologize if I'm not looking at you guys if you're on YouTube or Spotify. I'm driving, so I'm filming myself while I'm driving, and just don't take offense to it. But, a perfect example is, so I've got a 2023 Nissan Frontier, super reliable. It has about just under 30,000 miles on it now, but it's been great. I haven't had really any issues or problems or anything like that with it. My wife has a 2017 Honda Pilot, and then we recently bought actually it's behind me, my buddy is following me because I just picked up this car, but a 2014 Honda Accord Sport. It's got a little 4-cylinder in it, gets great gas mileage, is a great little car. But unfortunately, the previous owner had been taking it to a Valvoline oil change place. Something that happened recently with the Accord is that I started to notice little drips of oil underneath of it. And I went out and I'm like, okay, let me crawl under this thing and see what's going on, because I don't want it to turn into a problem, right? And the drips were getting more and more frequent and sort of pooling up. And so I crawled underneath of it, and I noticed that it was coming from the oil drain plug. So I got a wrench and I tightened it down a little bit, and it kind of started to catch a little bit, and then it spun. And then I tightened it again carefully, and it sort of started to catch a little bit, and then it spun, and I realized they had cross-threaded the drain plug. So the drain plug itself was screwed. So my options were either to drop the entire oil pan and replace it, which requires, removing at least the exhaust. There's some stuff you got to get out of the way to clear the sump so that you can get the oil pan down. It was just going to be a lot of work and a pain in the butt, and I did not want to do that. So instead, the other option is you can buy a slightly oversized threading new drain plug. So it's just slightly bigger, and it basically goes in there and re-threads into that hole. So the next time I do an oil change, of course I did an oil change at the same time, but the next time I do an oil change, I'm gonna have to check it and just kind of watch it to make sure that it doesn't start leaking again. But hopefully that solves the problem, and if not, I'll have to replace the entire lower oil pan. So that's why I say don't go to a Valvoline or any place like that. But again, as a result, no fault of the car's been a great car, but of a vendor, they screwed up the car, so that car was down, and I didn't want to drive it or risk that drain plug coming out and dropping oil all over, so I had to wait about a week for that oversized drain plug to come in. At the same time, my wife's car, very common issue with the Honda Pilots is that they have this thing called a control module that's built into it. It's basically responsible for making your smart keys talk to the thing, and also like your alarm, your smart entry. And reading on the forums, it sounds like it's very, very common for these modules to go bad. Hers is 2017 with about 70,000 miles. It's been a great car. And randomly, we would hear the alarm going off. And then we would hear, or we'd look outside and we'd see the headlights are on, and like the car is off, but all the headlights are on. And we're like, this is going to kill the battery. So I was, pulling the battery cables off at night and leaving it. Our neighbors were calling us or texting us and going, hey, your car alarm's going off again. Hey, your car alarm's going off again. So finally, I ended up pulling the fuse for the horn. And weirdly enough, that obviously stopped the horn and stopped the alarm from going off. But it's been several weeks that we've been dealing with this. And ever since we did that, it also stopped. It was doing like relay clicking and a bunch of weird stuff, lighting up the dash and stuff randomly. All that stuff has stopped since I pulled that relay for the horn. So we don't have any obvious problems. We still will probably have to deal with that control module, but both cars are back up and running. But again, there was about a week and a half of overlap where of the 3 cars that we had, only my truck was running and able to be driven. We could, plug the battery back in on her car, and like it was fine when it was driving, but if you parked it somewhere, you might come out to your alarm going off. So we were in a situation where my wife was like, hey, we got to take the kids to swimming. We've got to do this. I've got to run these errands. I've got to go to a physical therapy appointment later. Like, life happens. You have things going on. And she's like, I don't want to drive your truck. And can you hook up the battery on my car? And we were, jostling back and forth. So the reason that I bring this up and I tell you these specific stories is just to tell you, like, it could be a low mileage Honda. It could be, a very reliable car that I wouldn't say anything bad about Hondas. I still am very happy with my Hondas. And like, yeah, these things suck and they're not ideal, but like they're also not huge deal breakers, but they definitely caused us some hassle and some problems, right? And so as a result, I was kind of talking to my wife and I'm like, I've always had 2 cars. So like you could have taken my backup car, my other car, and that would have solved the problem. Then you wouldn't have had to drive my big lifted truck with all the gear on it and stuff. You wouldn't have had to worry about it. You would have had something that you could have driven. And so I've been thinking about it ever since I sold the 2nd gen truck. Of course, I wanted a Nissan or an Infiniti. So what I ended up getting is I bought a 2015 Infiniti Q70 all-wheel drive. And it has the, wait for it, VK56 VD in it. So the 420 horsepower, 417 pound-foot of torque V8 motor in this thing. And it's a lot of fun. It's also all-wheel drive. So if I had to drive it in the winter, it's a fairly practical car. And so my plans with this is just to make it look really nice, have it be sort of a nice luxury cruiser that's going to look good, that I could take to car shows and stuff when the weather warms up. But that kind of leads us into another benefit. So one benefit is that you've got a backup car if something goes wrong with your primary vehicle, or if your car gets damaged off-roading, or, going overlanding, something happens and you need to take it down for maintenance, or if you get new parts and you need to install things. I like having options. I like being able to hop in my other car if I need to run to AutoZone while, the suspension's torn apart on my truck. I've got something that I can take. Even if my wife is gone, even if my son is gone with his car, I've got an extra car that I can use for running errands or for things if the vehicle is down. It gives me flexibility, right? That's the main thing. It's not just about having 2 cars. This isn't any sort of a humble flex or anything like that. Like it's really a practical thing where like, if something happens very frequently, especially when you're modifying cars quite a bit, you're gonna have issues, or you're gonna have parts that you have to wait on, or you're gonna, start a project and not be able to finish it because you don't have the right tools, or, there's a million things that can happen. And so again, having a second car, if you can swing it, I think is very beneficial. So now next, let's talk a little bit about some other benefits of this. And for me, being a car person, that's the main reason that I've always had two cars. I've always had sort of a sporty car, and then I've always had sort of a four-wheel drive winter car. There's a lot of seasonality in driving, right? Overlanding and stuff. For me, my season is typically fall and winter. That is when I usually go. I'm a cold weather camper. I don't like the bugs. I don't like ticks. I don't like the hot weather. I am waiting historically for fall and winter to go camping. During the summer though, like, the truck is fine, but doesn't really handle very well. It's not very luxurious. It's a nice truck, don't get me wrong, I like it, but it's not perfect for summer. Plus, that's when car shows happen and stuff. So again, if you are a car person, if you enjoy, going to car shows and doing fun stuff, taking a big four-wheel drive truck that's modified for overlanding is kind of cool, but it's not gonna be the same experience at a car show as you might have with some sort of a modified car, right? So that is part of it for me too, is I want something to look forward to each season. So like in the summer, again, it's become a bit of a slog. I got to make sure all my gear is off the truck because I don't want to worry about theft. I don't want to, worry about my gas mileage tanking because I got all this stuff strapped to it. So I've got to think about my setup. It's more work. I've got to take stuff on and off. Again, if I wanted to do, a lot of the times during the summer, I try to do the work to my overlanding vehicle because that's the best time to do it, because I'm not going to be camping as much as I would in the fall and winter. And I want to get everything ready for fall and winter so that I'm ready when camping season hits. Versus if I had to wait because I don't have another car and I can't take the car down during the summer and maybe I don't get time until later on, that can throw off my schedule and then it reduces the amount of time I get to go camping. So then there's also something to be said for the fun factor, right? So having the truck, when it gets colder and it starts to get crummy and the weather gets crummy, I don't mind getting the truck dirty, right? But my nice, clean, luxurious Infiniti, I want to keep that nice and clean, right? I want that to be something that I'm proud of, that looks good, that I can take to car shows, that I can drive around and pick up the kids from swimming and stuff, from sports, and that I have a nice car, that I'm not a scum bum that just drives a dirty, filthy, muddy, big old truck with all this stuff strapped to it all the time, right? Sometimes I don't want to mess with that. I just want to drive a normal-esque car. Never ever stock. Everything I have will be highly modified. But so when the summer rolls around, I can look forward to, detailing up and cleaning up the Infiniti and making it look really good and taking it to car shows and things like that. There's other things that are different from overlanding that make it really fun to have when the weather warms up. And then vice versa too, right? Like then I'm going to drive this for the next 5-6 months. And then when it starts to get cold again, oh man, exciting. Snow's coming. I get to put the four-wheel drive out and drive the truck more. It also long-term saves wear and tear. So I do want to keep these vehicles. Now that I have this Q70 and the Frontier, my goal is to just kind of keep both these things for the next 6 to 10 years if I can. And just kind of make them my own, make them unique, modify them to be exactly what I want, because again, nothing can ever stay stock. And then again, enjoy them. When the summer hits, hey, time to put miles on the car, time to go out and enjoy the big V8. And then when the winter hits, time to switch to the truck, right? So that is a really nice benefit too. And that wear and tear is not inconsiderate either, right? Like, I have 30,000 miles on my truck. The majority of those have either been off-roading or going to off-roading. Like, I put about 5,000 miles on the truck the month after I bought it, going to Wyoming. But then the rest of the year, if I have to go to work, if I have to run the kids to sports, if I have to do anything, every mile is going on that truck. And I want that truck to last for a really long time. That's why I spent the money and bought it new, is so that I would have it to go overlanding, right? And to have it be reliable, because that was part of why I got rid of all my older trucks, is I wanted reliability. That was my focus, right? So I can keep my overlanding rig more reliable by keeping half the miles off of it basically every year, while also enjoying the benefits of a more comfortable, nicer car to drive around when the weather's nice. So you get the pros and cons of each. Now, again, is this practical for everyone? No. And is it even practical for me? It really wasn't. I mean, I've just got lucky that I had this old truck and I had it for 5 or 6 or 7 years. I didn't owe anything on it. So then when I went and bought the new truck, of course, that was a lot more expensive. I had to put some money out for that. But then I just owned this other vehicle. So now I've basically traded that for this other car. So I took the money from that plus some money from selling some stuff and used that money to buy this car. But the other thing is, if you want to do that, if you say, hey man, that sounds great, I would love to have a nice, shiny, fun car for summer, and then I want to have the overlanding rig for winter, if you have that plan in mind, then you can be very reasonable, right? Like, take my new truck out of the equation and think about my last two trucks. I had an '08 Frontier with over 200,000 miles on it. I had an '05 Xterra that I bought with 94,000 miles, and I drove it for about 4 or 5 years until I had about 150,000 miles on it. And those were both really great trucks. So they also cost a fraction of what the new truck cost, right? So like if you say, hey, I'm a 2-car person, I want to have these 2 cars, I like what you're saying, Jason, just think about that when you're buying your vehicles, right? All right, so with that being said, what do you guys think, right? If you're on YouTube or Spotify and you can drop comments below, do that. I'd love to hear what you guys think. If you're 2-car people, if you're a 1-car person, I mean, I definitely see the appeal of both. And again, this is not meant to be there's a right or a wrong. This is my opinion about it, and this is kind of what I see as the pros and cons of having 2 vehicles. But I want to hear from you guys, right? What do you guys think? So drop those comments down below. If you're just listening to the podcast, awesome. Thank you so much. Feel free to jump over to Facebook. There's links down below: Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. I'm pretty much everywhere. Wherever you want to come chat about this episode, I'd love to have you in those groups as well. There's also the Newbie Overlanders Facebook group linked below. That is a totally free to join group that I run that is awesome. It's got over 25,000 people in it, and we all just kind of talk about rigs and everything. You can ask any sort of questions, especially if you're new. It's really super helpful, and there's no bullying. We kick people out if they're jerks. So it's a nice place to be and to learn about overlanding. So any of those places would be a great place to learn and to drop your comments. Also in the description below will be links to my website where I've got funny overlanding camping themed patches and stickers. So if you're into that stuff, things like don't burn your wiener and it's a hot dog, or I hate people so I camp, or all things overlanding patches and stickers, all that stuff is linked to my website down below in the description. So check that out if you want to pick some of those up. Then if you're watching on YouTube, below this video is a join button, which is just sort of a passive way to support the channel. It also gets you early access to these podcasts, to the videos, to pretty much everything that I make, which is pretty cool. And you get some other perks. Or if you want to be more involved with all things overlanding, there's also a link to my Patreon group, which is awesome. We have a 24/7 Discord where we chat. We have once a month Zoom call. We are getting together for a trip or 2 every year, and that's been a lot of fun. So if that sounds good, check out the link to the Patreon. And that'll do it for this episode. So thanks so much for watching. Thanks for listening. Appreciate all of you, and we'll see you next time.